Alright, we are back with another painting tutorial today on a Nurgle Warrior of Chaos. And I'm starting off today with white blue from Pro Acryl. And I'm going to be applying it with a makeup brush I bought at Ulta. This is the Morph brand, I suppose. I'm honestly not too familiar with makeup brushes, other than that they're really good at applying dry brushed paint. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing, is dry brushing. This is going to be slap chop, more or less. And the Warriors of Chaos at this time, this is an old world model, if I didn't mention that. The Warriors of Chaos at this time are not, they're not completely gone to the Chaos Gods. They're just kind of worshiping the Pantheon in general, and they may prefer one god over the other. So these aren't completely over-the-top, mutated, tentacle and pus everywhere sort of guys. But instead, they are just Chaos Warriors who are, slightly green tinted, as we're going to do here. So, first step, like I said, is I'm applying this white blue with the dry brush very gently, just to highlight the ridges and raised bits of these Chaos Warriors. And these Chaos Warriors, they're old models, although now I suppose they're new models too, but they're just incredible. I know the new ones are, they've got dynamic poses and all that, but these Chaos Warriors, they're just so good. They take this dry brushing better than maybe any model ever made. And when they're all painted up, standing in lines, that's what Warhammer is supposed to be. Chaos Warriors standing in lines. So I'm going to finish up this dry brush and let that completely dry and set on the model, and then we'll come back and start in on the actual paint. Alright, we are back and we're using Black Templar for this next step. And I know it seems a little silly to use a black paint on a black miniature, but we really want the really dark, deep black of the Chaos Warrior armor on these guys. So we're going to go in and just apply this back over all the armor and the shield. And that dry brush we did will, pop through the contrast paint and give us just a subtle hint of some highlights. We're going to go through later and do a little bit more highlighting, not edge highlighting. Well, we're going to be highlighting the edges, but we're not going to be doing the traditional technique of edge highlighting. As you may or may not have seen in my previous video, I think that going to all the trouble of edge highlighting after you've used a shortcut method of painting seems a little counterintuitive. If I'm taking a shortcut with the main body of my painting, I don't want to then go back and do a detail-oriented fiddly process. I want to cut corners the whole way so I can get through 80 Chaos Warriors like I need to. But just for now, we are gonna paint all the black armor in this Black Templar, and then once that's dry, I'll come back and we'll do the next step. Alright, we are back and the black is nice and dry. And now we're moving on to Gore Grunt of Fur, and that's going to be for all the leather on this guy. These Chaos Warriors can be kind of confusing because they have a lot of materials that may or may not be the same thing on them, and may or may not could be the same color. So I try to separate all the leather from the cape. In this video, I'm also not doing the classic, how do I separate my Chaos Warriors by the god that they worship? Well, I'll just paint their capes. I'm not doing that. All my Chaos Warriors are going to get brown capes, and I'm going to differentiate them with just some subtle tinting and hints of color here and there. But for this step, I'm just painting the boots, the belt, the string around his neck, and any other leather. His gloves. I think I also paint the leg. You can just barely see the leg, the pants behind the armor on some of these poses, so I get that with this color as well. Mainly, I just wanted a color that sort of had a reddish pop to it, It will kind of, on all the marks, on all the gods, it will kind of work pretty well. So on this Nurgle, we're going to be tinting him sort of green, so that reddish brown will contrast well with the green and make it look nice. On the red of Khorne, it will, sort of almost blend into the red tint that we're going to do, and so make them appear even more red than we're going to make them. Um, and then on the Tzeentch, red and blue aren't exactly contrasting colors, but they're contrasting-ish. I'm not exactly sure what the technical term is, but it will sort of, contrast a little bit at least. And then with Slaanesh, it's Slaanesh. Nobody really cares about Slaanesh. We're gonna tint them pink, and it'll be fine. The red leather boots or whatever won't really matter one way or the other. Regardless, now that I've besmirched the name of all Slaanesh players, I'll finish this color up, let it dry, and then we'll come back and do the next step. All right, we are back, and we're moving on to Skeleton Horde. This is a super quick color, just adding it to his helmet, horns, and possibly, the skull on the sword and on his chest. Not a ton on this guy that needs this color. On some of the other Chaos Warriors, there's more. Like on the musician, he's carrying a horn, and that's all that bone color. Mm-hmm. And then every Chaos Warrior has a varying level of skulls on him. So, but on this guy, it's super quick. So I'll just finish this up really fast, let it dry, and then we'll come back and do the next step. All right, we are back and moving on to Fyreslayer Flesh, and this is going to be our fur color. You could honestly do a lot of different colors for the fur. You could even go and make the fur your distinguishing feature, and change the color. You could just paint it green, red, blue, pink for your chaos marks. I don't think that would be completely out of the question. I just wanted to do a more natural fur color. It probably doesn't make sense that all my Chaos Warriors have the same fur color either. They would have, different animals that they had skinned to make their cloaks. But I don't really care. I like them looking uniform. You can make your own determination about that yourself. But yeah, that's the only thing that we're doing with this color. So I'll just finish it up and let it dry, and then come back and do the next step. All right, then we are going to move on to Garagax Sewer, or however you pronounce that word. And this is going to be for the cloak itself. This is just a really nice medium brown. I honestly don't know what the purpose of Wildwood is anymore. That was my sort of go-to mid-brown, and I think Garagax Sewer is just better in every way. Maybe there are some situations if you're getting really particular with your shade of brown that you want Wildwood over this, but I haven't used Wildwood since this came out. So that's just personal preference. So of course you can do whatever you wish and use whichever colors you prefer. But for me, this is my perfect mid-brown, and I'm using it here for the cloak. And then once that is all dry, we are going to be done with the contrast paints, at least for now. And we're going to come back and do some metallics. All right, we are back, and we're going to start in on the metallics. We're using gunmetal here from the Fanatic Army Painter line. And we're going to do this in a couple different spots. First, we're going to do a dry brush of it on the chainmail. It is a dry brush, but I'm still using my skinny brush here just because I don't want to get it on anything else that we've already painted. And then I'm going to do an overbrush of it on the shoulder spike as well as the blade of the sword, just to leave a little bit of that detail from the black undercoat and then the dry brush of the pale blue. just, to give it a little wear and tear. Then I'm going to paint all the bolts all over his armor with this, just really quickly, just tapping them with the brush, nothing fancy. And then finally the rings that hold the helmet horns onto his head. And that'll be pretty much it for this. I'm not being super careful, just picking out the bolts that are immediately obvious. Then, like I said, overbrushing some other bits and calling that good. So I'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and we'll do the other metallic colors. All right, we are back, and now we're going to move on to True Copper, and this is going to be for the Chaos Star on his shield. Normally these Chaos Stars and like the trim on these guys are in gold, but I decided I wanted them to not be as gaudy as maybe pure gold would be, and so I'm doing a copper instead. It's sort of like moving in the direction of gold with how bright and vibrant this copper is, but again, not exactly gold. And that's all we're doing for this color, just painting the shield here. So I'll finish this up, let it dry, and then we'll come back and do our final metallic color. All right, we're back for our final metallic color, red copper in this case. And we're using this to paint the hilt of the sword and all the fanciness that goes on there, as well as his belt buckle. And then there's a little ring attached to his shield that I'm going to paint in this color also. I really liked this color in particular because while it's still sort of in the brass copper neighborhood, it's really red. So for the same reasons that I picked the reddish brown for the leather, I picked it. And it's very visually distinct from the color that we used on the shield. So it's very obviously a different material. But again, just like the last color, not a ton to really talk about here. Just going to paint these little bits here, let it dry completely, and really let it dry completely for the next steps that are coming up. All right, now we're going to start in on the turning this guy Nurgle. And so like I said in the beginning, we're just going to do a couple subtle things to sort of tint this guy green. He's not going to look green. He's still mostly going to be black and brown and brass and stuff, but he's just going to have a little tint of green. So we're starting off with Faded Green from Pro Acryl, and I'm just going to be quickly edge highlighting. You can call this edge highlighting if you want, but I'm just running my brush along the edge of the shield here. This is probably one of the easiest edge highlights you'll ever do. It's very sharp as far as edges go on models. So I'm just running my brush along the side there and getting that edge nice and highlighted. I am going to let this whole clip play here, just so you can see exactly where I'm picking out different green spots and stuff like that. But you'll see I'm going to go into two different greens. First, I'm going to start with Poxwalker, which is a shade from GW. And I'm just going to be putting that in recesses and, where two materials meet and in the chainmail and stuff like that. And then Karandras green in the even more small recesses. So if I put Poxwalker across an entire recess, I'll put Karandras green just in the middle of that recess. And like I said, I'll let this whole clip play here, and you can really see where I'm picking out areas to be green. And then, of course, in the final images, you'll see that when you look at them, I won't have multiple lined up, but you can use your imagination that when multiple are lined up together, they'll really give like a green vibe, sort of. Not going to be completely green like a Death Guard from 40K or like Plague Bearers from the Demon Army, but they will have enough green, I think, to denote that they are Nurgle. So you can watch the rest of this clip, and then I'll come back and wrap it up when he's all done. Alright, so there he is all finished up, and he's on the plank base from a couple videos ago, if you are curious. Let me know what you think of him in the comments below. If you liked the video, feel free to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.